Well, I like the fact that you said that they were double blinded and placebos. Just because like my mind immediately goes to back to consciousness and creating your reality and creating that response that you wanted, like whether it is a tulpa, right, a created entity that you're like, we're trying to contact this entity, whether it is a deceased loved one, whether whoever. I mean, most of the time in those cases, I would say it was a deceased person. I've been in this question like years ago when I was real deep into the occult and doing a lot of practices and stuff like that, like a lot of weird meditations and stuff. I got into like the pendulum stuff of like holding the pendulum up, and the pendulum for me was, they said you needed an object close to you, so I would use my necklace. I would hold the necklace and I would ask questions, and so most of the time, I feel like it would move. Like literally, I would hold it as still, and I'm trying to prove this to myself that is this real? Is this something I could trust? And so I would hold it as still as I could, and I would ask a question, and then it would go back and forth for no, and this way for yes and no, and it would move, and then it would stop after the question was done. Now that and for me it was into spirits controlling it. It was demons maybe or whatever wanted to communicate. I don't know what it was, but now when I and there was even one experiment what I did, I would put some old Marilyn Manson music on that started off real slow and got really fast and really heavy. And I would ask it to move in a circle and it would go be spinning really fast. And I would do it as a party trick. You know, we get everybody and say, hey man, I want to show y'all something. And we do it. And literally I'm holding it. I'm not doing it. And so but I guess back then it was like, okay, the spirit was communicating with me or whatever, or a spirit, whatever. But then now I'm like, like I kind of knew which way I wanted it to go in my mind. So now I'm looking at this as some type of telekinetic energy that I was controlling the whole time with my mind, even though I gave it a persona, if you will. I gave it an archetype as a demon or as a spirit or whatever to move this. Can you move this spirit? And then I seen the spirit moving it in my head, but it's like, was I really using my own telepathic energies to move it? Because when I would ask it yes or no, I think I would kind of maybe try to push it, maybe, I don't know, and yes or no. And then definitely when it's going in a circle, I'm envisioning it. Can you do it? Can you move it in a circle? Come on, move it in a circle. And I'm like communicating, and then it just starts. What about those type of things? What would you say? Can both be real at the same time? Could there be a reality where sometimes it was a demon and or entity, and other times it was me with my own telekinetic energy? What would you say to something like that?
Yeah, I think both possible. There was an interesting study done. It was quite detailed. Where, sorry, I'm just going to get rid of this thing off the screen here. Excuse me for one sec, brother. Okay, yeah, so there was an experiment where a group of researchers got together. They were all into parapsychology, and they thought it would be a worthy experiment to try to create an entity using their intention and as a group, and to then see if they could get parapsychological phenomena to happen under controlled conditions. And they called their hypothetical entity Philip. And so, yeah, they did actually, through the group pumping their psychic energy into this idea, like this kind of like psychic nucleus, they managed to create physical effects. Like they got rapping on tables, they got various phenomena that would normally be viewed as, psychic, parapsychological and entities here. But in that case, that was a classic example of a group that had actually intentionally gone about creating their own entity out of nothing. So their own thought form, essentially, thought form being, which is something that we do, and we've always done it. As soon as you imagine something, it exists as a thought form, and if millions of people imagine it, then it exists as a much more powerful, stable thought form with a lot more sustenance behind it, and to the point where it can become autonomous even, and that's a potential for any thought form that gets created. So yeah, you just have to look at it case by case, because everything is possible virtually.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. Again, hence Jesus, or hence any entity that we've repeatedly went to. There had to be a time where that started, and it was just a group of guys like, hey man, we need to make this thing. we need to make it real. I need you to give testimonies. I need you to make up stories about your encounters with this entity. Joseph Smith even. In my book, I talk about how like the majority of these so-called religions are birthed out of so-called angelic contact with, Muhammad in the cave and meeting an angel, and Joseph Smith meeting an angel, and even the New Testament, Paul is riding a freaking horse, and Jesus appears to him as light and knocks him off. And so it's like these angelic encounters that formed these religions, or these people to have some type of life-changing experience, whether they made them up, whether they made that up and it just became the thing and they had other people with them and it just caught on, which could happen, which does happen for sure. Or if it was real, like if they really encountered these angels, is a very, very interesting thing to look into. But I mean, the more you say it, the more you believe it, it becomes real and takes a life of its own. I guess if we even look at religion, if Jesus like really existed, like he definitely didn't have in mind like what Christianity has become, and other people getting a hold of it evolved this thing and corrupted your tulpa, corrupted that spirit that was beautiful. Maybe to certain people. For some people, it's not corrupted. It's beautiful and they love it, but it's just, I guess the beauty in that case is in the eye of the beholder. Whether with your spirits, I talk about spirit contact all the time, trying to contact what spirits are in these houses, or Uncle so-and-so. Like most of the time when we look at our ancestors, and I love the terminology of our ancestors watching over us, my ancestors were drug addicts and pimps, man. They beat their wives. They were slave owners. Like these aren't, I don't feel like are good people that we need to be trying to reach out to get information about how to live life. You know what I'm saying? Like, so people are like, is there any spirits here? Like, what if that spirit was a pedophile that's in your house and you're like trying to reach out and channel these entities? And, so again, there's some pitfalls and things when it comes to dealing with some of these energies,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's like I say, like with the example of a pedophile, like the more troubled humans are the ones who tend to remain earthbound. They're the ones who are, especially the ones who are like pathologically criminal.
Hang around. All the movies are about them.
Yeah. Yeah, they hang around and they don't want to, they're not interested in like guidance or, these, if you read, there's a book, you might have read it, 30 years, Carl Wickland, 30 Years with the Dead or something like that.
Yeah, somebody just talked about that there, on the last episode for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting exchanges and passages in that, because his wife was a medium and she would channel these spirits ostensibly, and they would share some very interesting things about some of the recalcitrant or criminal spirits who remained earthbound and didn't want their input, didn't want their guidance, didn't want to go into the afterlife, didn't want to go into the light and leave the earth plane. And, they talked about dragging them away to be, put into a kind of like a quarantine against their will, because they were so disruptive and so unruly, they wouldn't listen. So it was like, well, we can't have you running around creating chaos and running amok anymore. So we've got to, put you in the naughty corner kind of thing until you sort of straighten yourself out. So yeah, it's a menagerie out there.
Well, I think that's where the heaven and hell stuff comes from, of this judgment that's looming. And I think I even have a hope for a judgment, right? Of like in the end, everything being righted wrongs, and whether that is a holding place and somewhere that you go to be purged for the wrong that you did, or you have to learn the lessons, and not like some eternal punishment, but like, what do they say? Like I've heard something like hell for Hitler would be like him having to apologize and see the damage that he caused and what he did, and having to talk to the people and stuff like that. Like I mean, I know it's like fiction, but like the Apocalypse of Peter like talks about Peter goes into detail about the types of wickedness that you did on the earth in the afterlife. Like those demons or entities will do that to you. If you were raping people, you're going to get raped by these grotesque demons. If you killed somebody or shot them, you're going to keep replaying that over and over, maybe until you serve out a sentence. I would hope that there would just be a time period to where, okay, you're released, you've learned your lesson, you've accepted love. I really do feel like love plays a huge role in this conscious collective thing about learning how to love others and ascending higher, right? You're talking about the lower level entities or the stuff that people have done that are earthbound. It's usually negative, hatred, earth, like lower level stuff. And so it's this ascension process to accept love, to walk in forgiveness, to minister forgiveness and those things. I mean, I really feel like whatever supreme consciousness, if we call it God or whatever, that through those plant journeys and stuff, it's trying to teach us very similar experiences about love and about living in the moment and being in the now and understanding our that this is short. Like this is 70 years if you're lucky, kind of thing. Like, be in the now, be in the moment, taste chocolate, go swimming in the ocean, because where you're going, it's not that. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. And so that makes me scared of death too, honestly. Like just with the small stuff, that I'm not going to be able to swim in the ocean no more. I'm not going to be able to tell my friends jokes anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, just the little stuff that we take for granted, that I love, that I enjoy, that it's not going to be here. At least we're going to exist differently, versus whether you believe in reincarnation and coming back or going to another realm that is totally different. Maybe it's somewhat similar, another Earth type planet, or, I mean, there's so many different theories and so many different things that can happen, but I don't think there's any place that's going to be quite like this existence, which I think I spent the majority of my life loathing, not in majority now, I'm on the other side, but loathing and wanting to die and wanting to cause chaos and confusion and hurt people and corrupt it. Now I've like crafted a life that I enjoy and I love, and I can't wait to wake up and get started and have conversations like this and be with my family and go bike riding, and just the little small things that I love life so much has put me in this place to where, like, I don't want to lose it. So when we're talking about the elite who maybe are scared to lose their wealth or what they've achieved, they're trying to like live forever. I kind of feel that too. Like, now that I've built a life that I love and I enjoy, I don't want to leave it. It's going to be sorrow. It's going to be sad too. I don't, even coming back through reincarnation, I don't want to even do that. Like, I don't want to come back with another family and new kids and a new wife, or be a drunkard on the street. Like, I don't want to experience those things, because like, I'm in the moment and I love this moment that I've created and I've been present in. It's a fear to lose that, to change any of that. Maybe it's even the stability there that I've created, that I'm scared to lose that, but it's inevitable. It is the fear of the inevitable that's going to happen. Like, I'm going to have to say goodbye in this form anyway. But it's scary. I'm scared of it. I don't want to do it.
Man, death is the great equalizer. We're all going to our bodies are all going to end up dust one way or another. And that's just the way, that's the game we signed up for. This is the journey that we signed up for. And, we know in advance that these are the rules. And we know how it goes and how it plays out. And, if it's any consolation for anyone listening, I can say that, when people have near-death experiences, as an example, a lot of those people will tell you emphatically that moment of actually dying was the greatest thing that ever happened to them, the most amazing, the most beautiful. And, not just because they were often reconnected with loved ones, who'd passed already, but just because the sheer expansion and the beauty of that process of, because what the body does is it shrinks your consciousness, it reduces it, it limits it. So all of a sudden you get disconnected from this limiting factor, this filter. Take the filter away and your experience of reality becomes radically different. And those people, they rave about it. They can't wait. They can't wait to reach the other side again. So what we're not seeing here is the other side of the coin, which is the beauty of what is waiting for us on the other side of this. The other part of the journey, where the journey does continue, just is a little bit slightly different format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. You know what I'm saying? The hope is that it continues, and even the consciousness thing is that, like, that you are in essence, that I'm not just blended with 17 people, or or going back to become a part of the one. Which I really feel like that's going to be something similar, but to be even having a name and an identity on the other side, I want to believe it. I I really don't at the end of the day. Like, I feel like we're going to go back in. It's not going to continue on like this. Even like thoughts and stuff. And what scares me with this, I don't want to be a downer on this stuff, but these are just things for us to work through because other people have these thoughts too. The whole consciousness continuing on outside of the brain. When I look at Alzheimer's and I look at dementia and people who go, maybe 10 years or so at the end of their life and they don't remember anything or anyone. And just to think that when they die, they pop out like, oh, wow, I had to shake that off, man. That body, I couldn't talk for 10 years. I forgot everyone. I didn't know who you were. And that it comes back when you die. Like for me, it's hard to, it's hard to believe that they just pop back into who they were, kind of thing. I watched this documentary yesterday. It was a short interview with this family in Virginia who was like inbred, and most of them couldn't even talk. They're clicking and making dog noises and stuff, and like just to understand that their existence, and maybe when they pop back into consciousness that they'll get to kind of have a right brain. But what the hell is a right brain? Is it mine? Is my consciousness? Is it because they're not like me? That kind of thing, and just these questions,
Yeah. And these are questions will probably haunt us to the day we die. Like this is it. Like a lot of the literature talks about this veil of forgetting that we pass through in order to be in a body in the first place, and forget where we came from, forget our heritage and the rest of what we are, so that we can play this game in this role and do it, in earnest and mean it. And get the full experience from it. Because if we knew it was, a game, we wouldn't maybe take it as seriously. We wouldn't get the growth. We wouldn't get the full experience out of it. I definitely can say, after spending literally thousands of hours studying the question of what happens when you die, like what happens when consciousness does not have a brain to rely on anymore, is clearly that it continues in an enhanced state. Rather than being a limited one. And, if you think about the people with Alzheimer's that you mentioned, consciousness operating through a broken tuning system, a broken physical medium is going to be impaired. But the body itself is a form of impairment in the sense of it's shrinking and contracting the natural state of consciousness. So if you eliminate that from the equation, the restoration of consciousness is instant. It's like, we see NDEs of people who have like birth defects, or injuries and what have you. And when they come out of their body, they have a self-image that is perfectly healed and perfectly whole, and there's like references in the Bible to this kind of thing. Like people interpret it as this is the spiritual body that they talk about. And, that's true to a point. That is the truth of what happens as far as, evidence is available to us to indicate. And there's quite a lot of it. So it's a really interesting journey. I focus very heavily on that in the second book, which I'm in the process of working on. So hopefully I'll get it out early next year. Things go to plan.
That's awesome, man. Again, like, I think the paranormal, I think the supernatural, for me, that those fears, it really quiets those fears for me. It helps me understand those fears, that they're, it's legit. And I think that many people have different fears, and we have different ways to cope with it. For me, again, would be paranormal, spirituality to cope with that stuff and kind of reason through it. Most people, they just put it on the back burner and just try not to think about it. Like, so they feel like they're going to live forever. Most of us live life and without even thinking about death. We just, oh yeah, this is how it's going to be forever. And then when someone dies or when someone, things change, or a spouse cheats on you and your situation changes or whatever, then they get thrown in this frenzy or this whirlwind. So I think that just being present, man, I think that again, the spirituality and the plant medicine really communicate those messages and wanting to step into manifestation, whether it's dealing with the psyche on how to tell yourself yes, and this is the game plan and we're going to stick with it. Dealing with manifestation deals with being in the present moment. And so that's one of the biggest keys that I think that it seems simple, but it's deep. You know what I'm saying? To remain present in the moment and those kind of things.